Have you ever wondered why certain moments of intimacy remain etched in your memory, while others fade away without a trace? I used to think that intimacy was something simple, a matter of chemistry, the right moment, or simply attraction. But the more I paid attention, the more I realized that something was missing from that definition. There is a hidden layer, a silent language in the way two people connect. And it's this invisible thread that often determines whether a bond becomes unforgettable or sinks into oblivion. And here's the strange part. Most of us never stop to decipher it. We live the moment. We savor the pleasure. But we rarely ask ourselves, what does all this mean beyond the physical? This is where things get interesting, because intimacy isn't just about what bodies do. It's about the emotions that are communicated in a way that words could never capture. And the gesture that reveals this truth with the greatest clarity isn't always the one you'd expect. It's not the kiss, it's not the embrace, nor even the act of lovemaking itself. It's a different gesture, often overlooked, often misunderstood. A gesture that, when observed from the right perspective, changes everything about how you understand men, relationships, and even yourself. Now, before I reveal exactly what it is, let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt confused by someone's actions? As if they were saying one thing, but their bodies seemed to tell a completely different story. I remember a time when I thought I knew exactly what intimacy meant, but an experience shook my certainty. It left me wondering if the signals I had relied on were really saying what I thought they were saying. And that confusion lingered with me far longer than the physical act itself. So let's pause for a moment. Why do we place so much faith in words when the truth is often revealed in actions? And what if the most vulnerable, revealing, and even courageous message a man could give you wasn't something he said, but something he did? I don't want to give away the answer just yet, because part of what makes this so powerful is recognizing it for yourself. I'll just say this. The gesture I'm talking about isn't casual. It's not mechanical. It's not something every man does with every woman. In fact, it's one of the clearest dividing lines between a superficial connection and a deep one. Some of you might already have an inkling of what I'm referring to. Others might not. And that's okay, because in this video, I'm going to break it down step by step, showing you not only what this gesture is, but also the 5 hidden truths it communicates every time it happens. And if you stay with me, you may never see intimacy the same way again. Now, let me be completely transparent here. I don't claim to have all the answers. I've made mistakes. I've misread signals. I've convinced myself that someone cared more than they actually did, simply because I wanted to believe it. And I've also downplayed the importance of moments that, in hindsight, carried more weight than I realized. That's why I'm not here to lecture you. I'm here to share what I've discovered, what I've questioned, and what I've come to see in a new light. Maybe you'll agree, maybe you'll challenge me. Either way, I think it's a conversation worth having, because intimacy isn't just about desire. It's about meaning. And meaning is the one thing most people overlook until it's too late. Here's the promise. If you're willing to dive in with me, to explore not just the physical, but the psychological and emotional layers beneath, you'll start to notice patterns you'd previously overlooked. You'll understand why some men act the way they do, why some connections feel magnetic, and why others leave you feeling empty. But before I reveal the first hidden truth, I want you to ask yourself a question. When was the last time you felt someone's actions spoke louder than their words? Hold on to that thought, because the answer might change forever the way you view intimacy. The first hidden truth is surrender. And I know, at first glance, that word might seem almost counterintuitive. Surrender. Isn't intimacy supposed to be about passion, strength, taking the lead, showing desire? That's exactly what I used to think. I believed that for intimacy to feel alive, a man had to lead, control, act in a way that left no doubt about his dominance. But the more I looked closely, the more I realized something unexpected. True depth often begins when that illusion of control fades away. Think about it. Men are taught from a young age to never let go. Be strong, be unwavering, show no weakness. Even in intimacy, they carry this pressure to last longer, to be impressive, to never falter, to never hesitate. And yet, in that precise moment when a man surrenders completely to you, when he stops thinking about how he looks, how he measures up, and directs every ounce of his attention to you, something profound happens. That's not weakness, it's strength disguised as surrender. I remember wondering once why a man would risk stepping out of the role he's been conditioned to play his entire life. The answer, at least from what I've come to believe, is that surrender is in itself an act of trust. It says, in this moment, I don't need to control everything. I don't need to prove anything. I'm here to give, to lose myself in you, to put the focus on you instead of me. And that is rare. It's rare because it takes courage. It requires a man to take off his armor, even if just for a few minutes, and say, I feel safe enough here to let go. Some will argue that it means nothing, that it's just a routine part of intimacy, another move in the playbook. But haven't you felt the difference before? Haven't you sensed when someone was just going through the motions versus when they were fully present, fully immersed? The energy is unmistakable. One feels mechanical, the other feels sacred. And that's the essence of surrender. It's not about what the body is doing. It's about what the heart is saying through the body. This is where my perspective shifted. I used to admire men who seemed unshakable, those who never let their guard down, who appeared powerful and untouchable. But over time, I realized that those men often felt distant, closed off, like there was a wall between us. The men who truly moved me were the ones who could let that wall fall, the ones who had the confidence to give without needing to dominate. That surrender made me feel chosen in a way nothing else did. Because if a man can surrender in intimacy, it means he's secure enough to know his masculinity isn't fragile. He's secure enough to shift the center of gravity away from himself and place it entirely on you. And that's where the connection begins to transform. Ask yourself this. When was the last time you felt someone gave to you without rush, without calculation, without expecting something in return? How did that make you feel? For many women, that's the moment. Intimacy stops being an act of pleasure and becomes an act of devotion. It's not just about what he's doing physically, but about the courage it takes to step out of the spotlight. That's surrender. And surrender, when it's real, creates a space where intimacy can expand beyond performance into something far more honest. The truth is, not every man reaches this place. Some never will, because the idea of letting go feels too threatening. But those who do reveal something extraordinary, not just about how they see you, but about how they see themselves. They're saying, without words, I'm enough to let go. I'm enough to make this about you. I'm enough to surrender. And the moment you realize that, you start to see intimacy through a lens you can never unsee. But surrender is just the beginning, because within it lies the seed of something even deeper. If surrender is the door, then trust is the foundation. Without trust, intimacy collapses into something mechanical, something that feels empty, no matter how much passion you try to inject into it. And yet, trust is one of the most fragile and easily overlooked aspects of closeness. We talk about trust in relationships all the time. Trust with money, trust with loyalty, trust with words. But the trust I'm talking about here is different. It's physical, yes, but it's also emotional. Because in those moments of deep vulnerability, he's not just revealing his desire for you. He's revealing his faith in you. Think about what it means for a man to cross that threshold. Men aren't raised to be comfortable with vulnerability. They're told to hide their fears, to maintain a certain image, to avoid anything that might make them seem weak. And yet, in this gesture, there's no mask, no distance, no escape. He's close, he's exposed, and he's choosing to stay there. That's trust in its purest form. I remember convincing myself once that trust was about grand gestures, confessions, promises, bold declarations. But the older I got, the more I realized that those words meant little without the small, consistent actions that backed them up. And in intimacy, this is one of the clearest signals, because for a man to get there, he has to believe you won't mock him, that you won't diminish his masculinity, that you won't see his act of giving as weakness. He has to trust that you'll receive him with openness, with gratitude, with a sense of reverence for the vulnerability he's showing. And you can feel the difference. You can sense when a man is present with his trust rather than just acting out of obligation. There's a softness to it, an attentiveness, a way he reads your reactions, not because he's insecure, but because he cares about your comfort. That's not technique. That's trust. Let me be honest here. I used to dismiss these moments, telling myself, this doesn't mean anything, it's just sex. But looking back, I can see so clearly now that the men who brought trust to intimacy were the ones who left a mark on my heart. Their actions told me, I feel safe with you. I want to surrender to you without fear. And that safety changed everything. It allowed me to relax, to open up, to surrender in my own way. Because here's the part many people overlook. Trust isn't one-sided. It's not just about him trusting you. It's about you trusting him enough to receive, to let yourself be seen in your rawest form, to let go of control and say, I believe you'll treat me with care. Receiving is its own act of courage. And when two people meet in that space, intimacy becomes something extraordinary. Now, ask yourself, when was the last time you trusted someone enough to let go of appearances? Enough to be unguarded, enough to be vulnerable without rehearsing or protecting yourself? It's rare, isn't it? And that's why it matters so much, because trust transforms a physical act into a bond. It turns the simplest gesture into an unspoken declaration of safety and devotion. That's why, when a man chooses to show up this way, he's not just giving you pleasure, he's giving you proof. Proof that he feels safe enough to be vulnerable, brave enough to risk closeness, and open enough to lower his guard with you. And that trust, once established, doesn't stay confined to the bedroom. It spills over into the rest of the relationship. Suddenly, conversations deepen, barriers fall, you feel safer, more connected, freer to be your true self. That's the power of trust, but as powerful as it is, trust is only one layer. Because when trust combines with surrender, it opens the way for something even more sacred. If surrender is the door, and trust is the foundation, then adoration is the atmosphere that fills the entire space. And I don't use that word lightly because adoration carries weight. It's not about bowing down or giving up power. It's about reverence, about seeing something as worthy of awe and respect. For many women, this is the moment that feels most transformative because it's not just about being touched or desired, it's about being celebrated. Think about it. How often do women receive contradictory messages about their bodies? Be confident, but not too bold. Be sexy, but not too sexual. Be proud of yourself, but don't be vain. That constant contradiction creates shame, hesitation, and self-doubt. And yet, in the midst of all those mixed signals, when a man chooses to approach you with devotion, with the energy of, I don't just accept your body, I adore it, I want to savor it, I want to honor it, something inside you awakens. I know for me, there was a time when I struggled to feel completely at ease in my own skin. I questioned whether I was desirable enough, whether I was too much or not enough. But in those rare moments when I felt adored rather than just desired, the doubts began to quiet. I felt seen, valued, even radiant. That's the power of adoration in intimacy. It cuts through the noise and gives you the undeniable experience of being valued as something precious. And let's be clear, not every man offers this. Some men treat intimacy like a checklist, rushing through, doing what they think is expected, with no presence or passion. You can feel that, can't you? You know when someone's energy is casual, distracted, almost careless. But you also know the difference when the energy shifts, when time slows down, when every touch feels deliberate, when every gesture says, "I'm here, fully present with you." That difference is adoration. And here's the beautiful paradox. While it seems like he's giving everything to you, the act of adoration feeds him too. Because in seeing you let go, in watching how your body responds, in feeling your trust and surrender, he feels affirmed, he feels alive, powerful, in the most loving, connected way, not just physically, but emotionally. Adoration becomes mutual fuel. For him, it's devotion expressed. For you, it's value received. I used to think adoration was too big a word for intimacy, that it belonged to religion or ritual, not to love or sex. But the older I got, the more I saw how much reverence could change the way two people connect. When a man adores you in this way, he's not saying, "You're an object I desire." He's saying, "You're an experience I cherish." That subtle shift changes everything, because suddenly your body isn't a commodity, it's not something to be tolerated, it's something to be celebrated. And when a woman feels celebrated, she blossoms, she opens up more, gives more, trusts more. Adoration creates safety, and safety allows desire to grow wildly without fear. Ask yourself, when was the last time you felt not just desired, but appreciated, not just wanted, but honored? That feeling is rare, and that's why adoration matters so much. It's not about performance, it's about presence. It's not about obligation, it's about devotion. And that devotion leaves a memory that lingers long after the moment itself. But here's what most people overlook. Adoration isn't just about emotion, it's also about investment. Because when a man truly adores you, he's also choosing to give you his time, his focus, his energy. And that brings us to the next truth, which deepens intimacy even further. If surrender is the door, trust is the foundation, and adoration is the atmosphere, then emotional investment is the proof that it's all real. Because here's the truth. Anyone can go through the motions, anyone can mimic passion, anyone can play intimacy like a script. But you can feel the difference when someone is truly invested in you. When they're there, not just to take, not just to satisfy a fleeting desire, but to pour their energy, their focus, their time into you. That kind of presence can't be faked. I used to confuse attention with investment. I thought if someone was attentive in the moment, it meant they cared deeply. But attention can be shallow. It can last only as long as the pleasure does. Investment, on the other hand, leaves a trace. You feel it in the way someone lingers, in the way they adjust to your reactions, in the way they don't rush to the finish line but savor the journey. That's emotional investment. It's not just about what he does, it's about how he does it. And that's where it gets powerful. Investment is a choice. He could easily focus only on himself, on his own release, on what brings him instant gratification. That's the easier path. But when he chooses to invest in you, he's making a statement. You're worth my effort, you're worth my time, you're worth slowing down for. And when you feel that, when you sense that devotion, it changes the meaning of everything. I've wondered before, why does emotional investment matter so much? The answer for me is that it transforms intimacy from something transactional into something memorable. Sex without investment fades quickly. It feels empty, like a box was checked and nothing more. But when there's investment, it creates a bond that lingers long after the act is over. It becomes a memory, a connection, a story your body and heart hold on to. And that's what makes it different. Let me be vulnerable with you for a moment. There were times when I accepted intimacy without investment. I told myself it was fine, that I didn't need more, that pleasure alone was enough. But every time, I walked away with a silent emptiness. I realized what I truly craved wasn't just the act, but the meaning behind it. And meaning requires investment, because investment says, I care enough to give more than the minimum. I care enough to notice you, to respond to you, to adapt to you. That's what separates passion from performance. And here's another paradox. While investment seems like it's all for you, it feeds him too. Because when a man invests in you, when he sees how your body responds, when he watches you lose yourself in the moment, that's his reward. That's his affirmation that his effort built something real. And in that exchange, you both win. Ask yourself this: when was the last time you felt someone invested in you completely? Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. How did that make you feel? For most people, that's the difference between forgetting and remembering, between feeling used and feeling appreciated. Emotional investment is the bridge between adoration and commitment. Because when someone invests in you over and over, it becomes more than devotion. It starts to look like loyalty, like consistency, like unspoken commitment. And that brings us to the final truth, the one that ties it all together and reveals the deepest message of all. If surrender is the door, trust is the foundation, adoration is the atmosphere, and emotional investment is the proof, then unspoken commitment is the silent message that binds it all together. Because in the end, words can be cheap, promises can be broken, and labels can be unclear, but actions speak a language no one can fake. And this gesture, done with presence, devotion, and intention, often reveals more than 100 declarations ever could. I used to think commitment had to be loud, that it had to look like rings, titles, public claims. But over time, I realized that real commitment often shows up quietly, in the moments no one else sees. It shows up in the way someone consistently chooses to give, in the way they keep bringing their focus back to you, in the way they reveal themselves without needing to announce it. And when a man engages in this kind of intimacy with genuine care, he's not just chasing a fleeting high. He's telling you, "I'm here, I choose you." I want this moment to matter. That doesn't always mean he's promising forever, but it does mean he's committing his energy, his vulnerability, and his presence to you in that moment. And those are things men don't give lightly. That's why I call it unspoken commitment, because even if he doesn't say the words, the meaning is there. Have you ever noticed how the smallest actions can feel like the biggest promises? The way someone lingers instead of rushing, the way they remember your cues without you having to say them, the way they show up for you when it would be easier not to. That's commitment in disguise, and in intimacy, it's no different. When he chooses to give in this way, he's signaling that you're not just a body to him. You're a bond, a connection, something worth giving his fullest self to. And when you recognize that, it changes everything. Because suddenly you stop wondering, is this just sex? And you start to realize this is intimacy speaking louder than words. Let me be honest with you. I've had moments where I doubted whether someone cared, whether I was truly chosen, whether the bond was real. And looking back, it wasn't their words that gave me the answer. It was their actions. Actions that said, "You're not here just for my pleasure. You're here as my partner in this experience. I want this to mean something. That's the commitment that doesn't need to be spoken. And when you feel it, you know it." Ask yourself, when was the last time someone showed you, through their actions and not their words, that you mattered? How did that change the way you saw them, the way you saw yourself? Intimacy at its highest level isn't about techniques. It's not about performance. It's not even about the act itself. It's about what surrender, trust, adoration, investment, and ultimately commitment reveal. And once you start seeing intimacy through this lens, you can't unsee it. You start to notice which connections are shallow and which are deep. You start to value not just desire, but devotion. You start to realize that the language of intimacy has been speaking to you all along. You just hadn't learned to listen. So here's my challenge to you. The next time you find yourself in that moment, don't let it pass by quickly. Don't dismiss it as just a part of sex. Pay attention. Listen. Feel what's being communicated. Ask yourself what he's really saying through his actions, and maybe even more importantly, are you allowing yourself to receive it? If this has opened your eyes, if it's given you a new way to see intimacy, then I invite you to dive deeper with me. Give a thumbs up if this resonated with you. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because true intimacy isn't just about bodies, it's about connection, devotion, and the unspoken truths that reveal everything words cannot.